what's going on, everybody? My name is Dyrude, and I'm joined today by AlkBattery to reveal the GatorLAN League of Legends tournament bracket and break down each of the 8 teams participating in this spring season tournament.
Hello, I am AlkBattery, and for anyone who doesn't know, GatorLAN is a LAN event that will be hosted at the Wright Center at the Wright Union, and it'll be hosted Saturday, April 21st, starting at 10 a.m. Basically, inside there will be an art corner hosted by Gator Gaming, a main stage and a spectator area, and if you want to catch the stream because you can't be there physically, go and check out twitch.tv/UF Gator Gaming LOL Club. They're going to be having a whole bunch of games, something like Super Smash Bros, Tekken, Dragon Ball FighterZ, and League of Legends, and a whole lot of other games. So please come on and check it out.
For in-depth analysis and team insights today, we're also going to be joined by 2 very special guests, Booty and Lobsterman, the top laner and support for the team Blatantly Ignorant Gators. How's it going, you guys?
Great, man. How's it going?
Pretty good. So, I guess just tell us a little bit about yourselves in case people don't quite know on the Discord.
I used to be for a while I was the AD carry, and then for a while I was also the support for UF's main ULOL team, and now I'm kind of just playing on other teams for fun. Maybe I'll be on the ULOL team next year. I'm not really sure yet. And yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm just a random solo queue player that ended up lending a helping hand to the UF team more as a jungler positional coach, but now I'm playing support since it seems to work the best for kind of just a ragtag team that we've been competing in multiple tournaments in.
Awesome. So this is the GatorLAN Spring 2018 League of Legends tournament bracket. We're going to actually look at the first matchup. The number 1 seed, Ballastar Ball Cleaners, are actually going to be the Blatantly Ignorant Gators, playing against the 8-seeded Left Cleat Gaming. Starting things off, looking through each of the player lists, for the Ballastar Ball Cleaners, we have Fat Booty, currently present in the top lane, Salamander Man, the jungler, Kembo playing mid, I'm Zoso as the AD carry, and Lobsterman playing support for Left Cleat Gaming. They will have Atom Bomb 100 up in the top lane, You're Not Worthy as the jungler, Austin Gator 3 the mid laner, JJ Sports 25, and Theed 9 holding down the bot lane. So looking through everything, I just really want to start out with the jungle matchup. Salamander Man versus You're Not Worthy. As you guys all know, Salamander Man is a really strong tank player and can play a really controlling jungle game and prevent a lot of the other jungler from being able to do a lot of things. However, You're Not Worthy is pretty much a master Yi main. How does Yi really shape up currently in the competitive scene?
Yi can actually get off a lot of damage in team fights if left alone. He can be a real huge threat when it comes to just clearing his jungle faster than almost any other champion in the game. He can pressure objectives really fast with his true damage E and just high attack speed. Plus the build that he has is generally always going to be high DPS. He's purely offensive, purely made to do damage and clear the jungle. His ganks are only effective when he has red buff or whenever the enemy laner is just pushed out and he can just walk in and DPS them down. The issue with Master Yi in a competitive setting is when you walk into stuff like Sejuani or Zac or any champion that has decent lockdown and enough health to last through what he has, which is only damage, he becomes absolutely worthless. If you can shut him down early, you get decent vision of where he's clearing, and you shut down his ability to scale up to get the strength that he needs to 1v5 or 1v9, whatever, and you can deny his free ganks, in quotes. There's nothing really that he can do in a real competitive setting.
Yeah. So, going off of actually the last tournament that you guys did for ULOL, after the game, we had talked with Marcus, Salamander Man, and this was right after the changes where they got rid of Tracker's Knife, and it didn't look like Salamander Man was in any position to really do much because it was kind of painful to watch, if I remember correctly. So do you think that his style of controlling the jungle is still going to be effective when junglers like Olaf and Skarner are back and they kind of put forth a 1v1 sort of jungle meta?
Well, that's like a scary thing too, is the idea that Salamander Man plays a role where he's really focused on making sure that his lanes don't crumble right? Like he tries to put lanes ahead, but mainly he like tends to really want to help lanes that are falling behind because he doesn't want any like he doesn't want the team to build such an insurmountable lead that it becomes a problem later in the game. And that kind of playstyle can probably open like a window for a Master Yi to either just sit in his jungle all day and free farm, or maybe get some ganks off. But like I think as long as we don't let him get any ganks off, or any team doesn't let a Yi get many ganks off, even if he farms well, it just becomes making sure that you prioritize team fights as a game plan in general, because Yi will be like pretty uncomfortable in that situation. Like he can still team fight okay, but if you're team fighting well and you're team fighting as a unit and you're calling focus onto the Yi every time he comes in, and you have one of those lockdown tank junglers like Sejuani and like Zach, which we know Salamander man likes to play, it can be pretty hard for a Yi to maneuver those team fights, honestly. So even if he does get to like theoretically free farm, having an impact on the rest of the game, I think, is even harder than getting through the early jungle phase as Yi and getting to the rest of the game. Like playing team fights well has got to be like one of the most difficult things because he's like a backline dive carry kind of who just wants to who pops in 1 second if he gets CC'd. So he's got to be really, really good about like making sure he uses W well, making sure he goes in after Sejuani ult is down or Zach E is down, or if we're running a Lulu bot lane or a Janna bot lane, making sure Lulu doesn't have polymorph or Janna doesn't have ult. That kind of stuff is going to be really important, and maybe we shouldn't overlook this guy because he does play so much Yi, and maybe he will take all that stuff into account and consider that before he goes in, at which point it could be a problem. But I think I trust us enough to be able to just out team fight him, even if he does have a solid early game, because Salamander Man plays generally more passive than he does aggressive.
So you're speaking to Marcus's ability or Salamander Man's ability to control the game on the tanks. Because Zach and Sejuani have high impact early and they have high CC early, if they get into the early game skirmishes and they CC and lock down the right targets, whether it be top and mid, that he's choosing to gank, or bot lane, there shouldn't be a way that Master Yi can successfully survive in the skirmishes before his item spike. And the goal for him will be to pressure Master Yi, keeping him down or building his lanes up before the Master Yi power spike, and once the Master Yi power spike hits, playing the 5v5 rather than the skirmishes, because at that point there's no way that he's going to lose the skirmishes. Even if he gets CC'd, he can meditate for a little bit afterward, get his health regen back up, and then just wipe through whatever tank, carry, anything that comes his way. So as previously Fat Booty had said, they need to prioritize team fighting at the point in which Master Yi becomes an actual threat. The Tracker's Knife removal shouldn't be too big of a deal. The alternative to playing Olaf and Skarner and focusing more on the jungle matchup and being more invadey and aggressive is not as relevant, because the tanks that Salamander Man plays can still move in the early game. They can still get the deep vision, they can still clear the small camps fast enough to play the counter jungle game and stuff like that.
All right. Shifting gears even a little bit, still talking about the jungle a little bit, I'm a big proponent of jungle mid synergy. And looking between these two teams, obviously, the Battlestar Ball Cleaners, you guys got Kembo in the mid lane, currently Masters player, currently also the number 3 Zoe in NA with 290 games and a 57% win rate on that champion, going up against Austin Gator 3, a player that actually opts a lot into Swain and LeBlanc, who I know, I'm pretty sure, Fabs, you were telling me is really two very strong picks, at least that we've seen in Korea as of right now. So tell me a little bit about how that could go a long ways, both between the jungle and the mid.
Well, Kembo actually does, and this comes from obviously being in the team and getting to experience all this communication firsthand, is Kembo actually does a great job when he's not tilted of micromanaging Salamander Man, telling him where he needs to be, at least oriented around the mid lane to make sure that jungle mid matchup goes well. When it comes to the side lanes, I think it is mostly going to be on the side lanes to make sure you ward up, and obviously just make sure you don't get ganked by Yi. Yi is really not like an amazing ganker. He does have good damage, so if there's somebody in the lane who can provide the CC for him, he can definitely get the kill. But you're going to have to be pretty overextended otherwise in the side lanes to die to a Yi gank, at least in the early game, probably pre-6 or before he has skirmishers. But as long as we ward our side lanes and we play like accordingly, make sure that you're not shoving up really hard if you think the jungler can be topside, making sure that you kill blast cones so he doesn't have that gank path. I think it's going to be pretty hard for him to get ganks off. And then, again, if he tries to opt into the 2v2 mid with his mid laner, it's almost a certainty that they lose because of like the skill difference, but not only that, but because, like Lobsterman said, Sejuani and Zac in the early game are pretty scary skirmishers, and Yi is not very strong yet. You know, he hasn't hit any of his... He should really try not to get involved in those fights. So as long as we stay safe in the side lanes, we should be able to win through mid, theoretically.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that actually, you know, makes sense. Not only just because of the player difference, but just as like all the points that you said. You know, Kembo, obviously, he doesn't just have the Zoe in his pocket. I know that we all know about his Syndra and how disgusting that can be. And he also plays a Swain. Then he has the kind of Lux as another pick that kind of goes to his side. The very last thing I want to talk about, though, is that bot lane matchup. You guys do have an EU import on your team. I'm Zoso. I know it says he's on NA, but his alternate account's name is EU Suzoso, so he's definitely EU. Draven main, right? Runs it down mid a lot. Is that a worry for this matchup?
Zoso is a very aggressive AD character. It does definitely get put in situations where it doesn't always work out for him, we'll say. However, there's never a time that he's not ready to play the hyper carry late game, to play the mid game team fight and excel, you know, to the best of his ability. He's learned those skills from primarily playing Draven, and he's learned the transitioning into the late game from his Vayne and from his Jinx, and recently what he's picked up is his Varus. The matchups that I will be afraid for most for him are going to be high pressure early game champions that get him off of his groove early. If he can make it out of lane phase, there's absolutely nothing that's going to stop him. His team fighting positioning and his ability to stay alive and stay on the right target in team fights is actually very commendable for his ranking, and the time that he spends playing.
Yeah, and you know, especially inducing tilt, it can be a big thing that can happen between any team, and is a good strategy to have. And I know at least for Zoso, he was quoted once with saying "Get me out," at least more than a few times. So that's definitely a strategy that you can look to him. But like you were also saying though about him being a very aggressive ADC, also being a Vayne main, JJ Sports 25. On the other side, so that might be contested pick, something that if it's left up, maybe Zoso is willing to first pick, because I do know, I believe at GatorLAN it was last year, he did first pick Vayne just simply to disrespect the enemy ADC, so I know that's not too far out of his realm.
I actually think that when it comes to the picks in bot lane, their champ pool is pretty worrying because it doesn't seem like they play anything that's super meta. You don't see the Varus, you don't see the Caitlyn, you don't see the Tristana, which means that if they're not going to take those picks, they might have to ban them, because those are really strong picks, especially like that Varus, potentially the Caitlyn. I know Zoso likes playing both of those, and if they're not going to take those picks and they're just going to be left up for us to pick, that's really worrisome, I think, for them, especially considering the fact that all of those picks scale really well and can totally deal with Vayne, Jinx, Ezreal late game, I think. So at least in a 5v5 like team situation where you play it out well and there's like no crazy mistakes. So I think that the biggest thing in the bot lane is really just like Lobsterman said, is if they really, really get a big advantage early, because the bot lane sometimes like falters early game, and something like, for example, the Brand can be really annoying to play against if you're playing Varus, for example, or maybe the Caitlyn, who are like semi-immobile champions. It can be really difficult to play against a good Brand. I don't know how good this guy is at Brand, but they can put down a lot of pressure in the early game and make it pretty hard to lane and last hit. And that's pretty much like the scariest thing. But outside of that, I think that their champ pool is should be the biggest worry for them, because if they're not going to pick any of these picks away, they're going to have to ban some of them out. And if they're banning some of them out, then you're opening up picks in the top side or in the jungle or in the mid lane, or even for support, that we would really be like super glad to have, maybe the Janna, the Zac, or the Zoe mid, stuff like that, if they're wasting all these bans on AD carry.
So
Yeah, so
something.
pinching the AD pool, forcing Zoso into something uncomfortable is not too big of a worry for him or for anyone.
Yeah.
And the Vayne counter pick should be a fun little interaction, but it probably won't show up as much as speculated.
So, from what I've gathered, at least from our conversation here, I guess for win conditions, we're going to be seeing Left Click Gaming trying to get winning lane matchups, especially in the top side where we see Pantheon, Trent, Camille. We want to see winning matchups for the top lane, and we're going to see it obviously from the jungle. So if he has a matchup, and the Swain, something like the Swain and LeBlanc, especially LeBlanc at least, he can definitely make it a little bit more difficult in mid. But with such such a weak champ pool on the bot side, I guess the win condition for the bot side for the entire game, I guess, is going to have to be pick winning matchups, shut down blatantly ignorant Gators early, so that they never make it too late game. Because as you guys said, if he's not shut down early in laning phase, then he's just gonna be able to pop off in the late game.
Yeah, their win condition is definitely going to be snowballing the early game, getting you to his power spike, and abusing that power spike with a decent protection team comp. Something that can escort Yi to that mid game, escort him through the team fights, and help him just absolutely destroy. The tank matchup against Master Yi is not very comfortable, since once he gets enough damage, you just instantly melt. The issue is going to be can they get Yi that strong by taking advantage of the mistakes that the blatantly ignorant Gators make in the early game. That should be the interesting unfold.
There you have it. Atom Bomb 100. You're not worthy. Austin Gator 3. Sounds like it's on you guys to get through that early game and take down the blatantly ignorant Gators. All right, going into our second matchup of the day, it's the 4th-seeded CounterLogic Gators taking on the 5th-seed Team Fish Burrito. For CounterLogic Gators, in the top lane, they have the ultimate life. Their jungler is Threat. Mid laner, Scott Lightning. AD carry is Max A Million. And their support, Captain Timo28. For Team Fish Burrito, up in the top side, I believe it's Jin McCain. For the jungle, it's going to be Ghost F52. Their mid laner is Huizian? I hope I'm saying that right. ADC and support is Impressed and Jesus and a Bottle 69. Looking through these teams initially, at least for Team Fish Burrito, there were a couple players that seemed out of place. They have a few mid mains on the team, a few ADC mains. It doesn't really seem like their players all necessarily fit in the right place. Namely, Jin McCain. It seems like he's playing top lane for them. Really seems to be an ADC player, mid lane player. Although I do personally know Scott Lightning plays a ton of mid, which is why I'm fairly confident in putting him there. His most played champions are Darius, Kale, and Irelia, pre-rework Irelia, might I add, but not necessarily the most successful, even on those champions. What are some worries going into that top lane?
Well, both of those, they play like really volatile champions. Like Jason Trundle definitely want to dominate the 1v1, especially, and have a lot of pressure inside lane later on in the game. I mean, Jace wants to group in team fight once he finally scales, but in the lane, he's like super annoying to deal with, and he really wants to crush that lane and get a huge CS lead just with the 1v1 and maybe with a little bit of jungle help. And this guy plays like Darius, Kale, Aurelia, and I don't think any three of those champs would really deal well with something like the Jace. Like, Kale has the range to match, but she takes a little bit more time to ramp up, and so Jace will definitely have the advantage in the early game, I think. So I think CounterLogic Gators really has to worry about their top lane just getting like absolutely hammered with either of those picks, because it can be pretty scary. It seems like they have pretty good counters if they're gonna stick to Darius, Kill, Irelia. They have pretty good counters in Jace Trundle for Team Fish Burrito.
Yeah, volatility is the key word in both players' champ pools.
Yeah. However, Jin McCain, he does at least have a game, at least a few games on Ornn, and I do know a lot of people think that Ornn is a very annoying pick. Is it very likely, to see him at all throughout GatorLAN?
Well, I think that's something that we'll see in general, is like a lot of these players looking at what they play in solo queue is not going to be what they play in tournament, because they're going to be trying a little bit harder and they're going to be wanting to build team comps that work well together. And Ornn is just one of those champs that, like, if you're honestly interested in building a good team comp and you don't have like a super stubborn top laner who doesn't want to play tanks, you should pick him almost every time he's up, you know? Because he's really just that good. He's super annoying to deal with in lane. It feels like it's impossible to trade against him. And then later in the game, his ult is like a great engage tool. It's on low cooldown, and you know it can completely change an entire fight by itself. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either of these top laners stray away from their more solo queue, like solo-oriented carry picks, into something that brings more benefit to the team as a whole in the tournament.
All right, I think that makes sense for me. And even shifting around from the volatility of the top lane to something that's pretty interesting in the jungle that could maybe help the Ultimate Life, who plays a lot of those volatile top laners, get going, and that's their jungler threat. Currently, Diamond 5, Nocturne 1 trick, 177 games, 55% win rate. No other champion is close, except for Jax with like 11 games played. Nocturne's received 3 buffs, I know, so far this season. Lobsterman, do you think maybe as a jungler, take me through that a little bit?
Sorry, for a count, actually, in the past 3 seasons, he's played over 1,000 Nocturne games at least.
Jeez.
Right, so obviously he knows what he's doing on the champion. So he's probably getting very good use out of the most recent buffs. That basically just rounded off his pressure, allows him to do what he does best, which is annoy everyone with the ability to not respond when he ults, shutting down vision, and just getting the decent damage he needed in the early mid game in order to actually take down people and to be a real big threat. If he knows what he's doing, it should be no problem at all for him to snowball through the early game, crush the counter jungle, and hopefully snowball a solo lane or two. The issue with Nocturne is if he's not able to, similar to Mastery, if he's not able to get to the level that he needs at the right time, and he gets shut down in team fights, he becomes relatively worthless. The benefit to picking Nocturne over something like Mastery is that Nocturne can CC theoretically with his fear, and he could definitely shut down vision with his ult, which can stop some good TP plays or just general response from the enemy team.
Yeah, I mean, that ultimate was buffed to be 6 seconds of total darkness, which entirely could last an entire team fight and could be a pretty big team fight impacting ability. Is there any other ways that maybe the Nocturne pick does that? I mean, I know that obviously the ultimate, as I just said, can impact the fights at all, but is that pretty much like the one playstyle that we see for a Nocturne in competitive, or?
I mean, if you're talking about competitive, like actual the highest level of play, they actually tend to, when they pick Nocturne, maybe they'll go a little bit of damage early, but they definitely go a little bit tankier later in the game. As long as you're not watching like a mega aggressive jungler like Levi or something like that, they tend to go a little bit tankier. But I think if this guy's going to pick Nocturne and he's played that many Nocturne games, he's probably super comfortable in his ability to carry a game if he gets ahead. So I think if we see this guy getting ahead, he's just going to become an assassin. Like, he's just going to build Dustblade, he's going to build, you know, Shiv, whatever the hell it is, and he's just going to look to one-shot squishies on the team repeatedly. And it's really going to be on Team Fish Burrito if they decide to let this pick through. They could always just ban it, and it looks like this guy would be super uncomfortable playing anything else. But if they don't ban it, it's going to be on them to make sure that they stick together, and just try to maybe not completely shut him down, but you really can't let him get as ahead as he wants to be, because if he does, it's almost impossible to do anything. Anytime you send somebody to a side lane to catch a wave, there's a good chance that the Nocturne just ults and one-shots them before anybody can respond, and it's really hard to have any counterplay to that, as long as the other team is setting up vision well for the Nocturne, making sure that he's not diving into 5 people that he doesn't see.
All right, I think that works for me. And just before we move on to the next matchup, I'm just going to highlight a few other things going on throughout this game. For the mid lane, Scott Lightning versus Husian. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. Scott Lightning, Fizz main, 48 games, 54% win rate. Next highest is Vigar at 24 games. Very likely, it seems like he would pick something around those. But Husian, easily a Vladimir main over the past couple seasons. Could be another, I think, very meta champion, a champion that could easily get banned out. And looking towards the bot lane, Maximilian, huge Jhin player, 79 games, 61% win rate, and recently picked up the Kaisa with 40 games and a 68% win rate, which to me I think is really impressive, actually, even given what this champion can do now towards the late game and where it's currently sitting at. And as far as the supports go, not a whole ton of knowledge on Captain Tima 28 for the Counter Logic Gators. So we'll see how he shapes out as a player. And then Jesus in a Bottle. Seems like, standard Rakan Leona player, something pretty aggressive is what he's going to be willing to take. Any final thoughts on any of those I just mentioned, or?
It looks like the mid lane players are very comfortable and knowledgeable on playing the early game power spike, the Fizz with the level 2 spike, the Vladimir with his Crimson
Rush.
Tide.
Crimson
Rush.
Rush.
Or is it
Yeah,
Crimson
yeah.
Rush or Crimson Tide?
Yeah, when he plays off the Q buff and he plays off hitting that level 2 spike and using his E for the harass, both of those champions can shut each other down, kill each other really quickly if they're running Ignite. Yuzian playing Cat and Akali, he knows how to play safe until he gets that power spike, play safe until he gets that gunblade, that revolver, whatever item that he's building in that game. They know how to escort themselves on those squishy, high power, weak early game kind of champions, or even strong early game if you're playing something like Fizz. So it should be interesting to see both of them play with either high amounts of respect or high amounts of disrespect and going very aggressive rather than playing for the lane control. As far as the bot lane matchups, it seems pretty even as far as what champions are going to be playing. Similar play styles, similar levels of strength, and for the support, you can't really say much other than we know Jesus in a Bottle is going to be bringing out the Rakan, which is always a scary champion.
All right, that works for me. Alk, let's take it over. Let's go to the third matchup.
All right, so going for the third matchup, we're looking at UF Team 2, which composes of CDN top lane, Michaelis in the jungle, General Wally in mid, and the bot lane is Scythe and Gremmy99. For the other opponents, it's going to be Outer Heaven Gaming. They are coming in actually from the prelims, and they are top lane Pause, jungle Pitiful, mid lane Zerst, 80 carry, 6'1" man bun, and support Flantogram. So just going through their champion pool, we personally know Pitiful actually. He's a super aggressive jungler. He spams a Mumu and Warwick a lot in games. Looking at the jungle matchup of Warwick for both of these players, do you think that contesting the Warwick is as important for these players, or is it just something that's kind of can be ignored?
Well,
Definitely Warwick is going to be contested. Having such a strong champion, Warwick is not weak in any sense of the word at any time in the game. Warwick is going to be contested 100%. The interesting thing is going to see what kind of pocket picks these junglers bring out, something fresh that they're going to play, because we both know, or we know both of them can play Warwick, and we know both of them can play that play style very well. It'll be interesting to see what else they bring.
Personally knowing Pitiful, he would do anything to get that Warwick pick. So as Lostman said, if it's not banned, he's going to want to get it.
So looking now maybe a little bit towards the bot lane, looking at the duo of Scythe and Gremmy for UF Team 2, we see on Scythe he's a huge Lucian main. He's been playing it all 3 seasons, basically the past 3 seasons, a lot. And Gremmy I know at least has 800 games on Thresh. Do you think that they're going to be able to match up against the basically Caitlyn, Xayah, those kind of playstyles with maybe we see a Xayah Rakan coming out of Outer Haven? Do you think that can match up against what do you think about the matchup between Lucian and Thresh versus like a Xayah Rakan, even post nerfs?
I actually think that this matchup, in terms of like the two teams all together, is actually going to be one of the better matchups because I've played both of these teams before, and Outer Haven Gaming is maybe slightly worse, but UF Team 2 is pretty good, but they also have some like pretty clear flaws in their playstyle that should be definitely exploitable at different points in the game. When it comes to the bot lane matchup, Safe and Gremmy is pretty good at Thresh. Like, he's a solid Thresh player. He can hit you with hooks if you do like the basic dodges and stuff like that. He'll definitely read your movement in that sense. But if you take him off the Thresh, he definitely starts to get a little bit out of his comfort zone, 100%. Anything after that, the Tom, the Rakan, he hasn't played anywhere near as much games on, and I don't think he understands them anywhere near as well as he does the Thresh. So if I was Outer Haven Gaming and they've done their research, I would try to take him off the Thresh 100%. And especially if you can manage to force him onto like an E-Girl support kind of thing, like an Ardent support, he literally doesn't play those champions at all, in the slightest. When we used to scrim against them, because they're UF Team 2, we used to scrim against them. he literally played like his first game of Janna in a scrim after having played League for years, you know? So he literally does not play any of the squishy supports, and getting him onto any of those should be a priority, or even just going as far as taking away the Tom, because it can cause a lot of problems against teams that aren't well coordinated and aren't paying attention to his ult and his ability to save people. If you get him onto the Rakan, I already think that you've done a lot for your bot lane, and you've given yourself a much higher chance to win. When it comes to Safe, Safe is pretty good mechanically, but he has questionable decision making. So while he's good on the Triss and he can definitely carry in a late game situation, and he can build his own lead in lane as well, he's definitely going to be like the kind of player who will maybe jump directly in instead of a little bit diagonal to give himself a little bit more room, and it's definitely punishable. It's super punishable. So if I was the other team, I would look out for that. 6'1" man bun and Flantagram. I don't really know anything about them, but if they can take the Kate and force Safe onto the Trister Zaya, I think both of those are champs that are really vulnerable to being bullied in the early game by a champ like Kate. And I don't see UF Team 2 banning out the Kate unless they really get stomped and it's in like a series play where they have to adapt over the course of the series. I don't see them banning the Kate. So I think Outer Haven Gaming should really prioritize that Kate in the bot lane. And like I said, if you can get Grammy off of those, then Flantagram off of his first two picks, Flantagram can literally have free reign over what he wants. He can take Lulu, he can take Janna, he can take Soraka, he can take Karma, he can take literally anything, and you'll know for a fact that Grammy is not going to contest any of those picks because he simply doesn't play them.
All right. I kind of want to touch on the top lane before we move out. CDN plays a lot of Camille, Talent, a little bit of Kled. However, in the past, we've seen him play Aatrox. What do we think about the competitive viability of Aatrox?
Aatrox is a very strong laner. He's got very decent gank setup with his knock-up. He's got good slows. He's got everything he really needs to assist a jungler, assist, well, himself, really. The issue with Aatrox is, can you lock him down long enough to get through his power spike with his passive, get past the point where he can just one-shot you with his what's it called, blood thirst or blood price, something like that, with his W. If you can survive that damage and you can deal with the attack speed spike that he has, you're probably not going to die to him. If you can CC him long enough to where he can't get that revive going, you're probably not going to struggle with him at all. The competitive viability in Aatrox is all about the early game lane presence and transitioning that to any kind of lead at all. If Aatrox can get a lead, you're probably not going to get it back simply because he can just sustain himself through any fight at all, any skirmish, any team fight, anything.
You can just send him off to a side lane. I guess that'll have to be a point of contention, considering we do see Outer Haven Gaming playing a lot of Mals, and obviously the jungler with Warwick and Amumu. A lot of good lockdown, especially either team fight with Amumu or single target lockdown. All right, I do want to move over to the last match of the first quarterfinals, and that'll be Kiss Me Dads versus LMP Gaming. Kiss Me Dads is going to be composed of Bagels are nice in the top lane, Ritz in the jungle, Chef Boyard T in the mid, Zaphos in AD carry, and a new Epoch in support. Now, LMP Gaming, we have top lane Captain Ego, jungle Sergeant Shocks, mid lane Boster, AD carry LMP Moose, and support Willie Melson. So, I want to take a look at the AD carry role again. We're going to be looking at Kiss Me Dad's Zaphos with a lot of games on Vayne versus 800 games Jinx LMP Moose. What do we think about like Vayne versus Jinx, and if we're going to be able to see something like that with such a disparity with two late game champions like that?
I don't know, Thomas. What do you think?
I'm still thinking about it, to be honest with you. The big difference is about how they get there, not so much the champion itself, I think. Because you can use any champion within their pool in an effective manner late game. But if they don't get there properly if they don't have the map set up that they want, if they don't have the vision and the pressure that they need, or the item, if they don't hit the item spike all around the team fight that they want, no matter how late it goes or what champion they pick from their specific pool, they're probably not going to get the benefit that they absolutely can abuse in order to win. It's very even, I would say. It's too even for me to give a I guess a notion of this person benefits over the other just because of their champion pool matchup in general. There's not a certain point in the game where most of these champions become absolutely insane in comparison to the other. So it's going to be difficult for me to judge what they're going to pick as far as their own team draft and what they're going to ban out as far as the other team draft, because they're very flexible as well.
The
All
thing
right.
is, I can see that if both bot lanes get exactly what they want, so if Kiss Me Dads gets Vayne and let's say Alistar, Veigar, Brand, and LMP Gaming can take Jinx Karma, I can see that being a super tough lane for the Vayne to get out of. Jinx Karma against Vayne Alistar sounds like just super punishable. You're gonna have to give up a ton of CS if the other lane is playing it right, and they're just gonna perma shove you under tower and poke you while you're trying to CS the whole lane. So I think Vayne, if anything, is gonna have to be saved until one of the later picks, ideally, when they can see that they've taken something, that LMP Gaming has taken something like the Rakan or maybe the Morgana, so you can use Tumble to dodge the bindings, and it'll be a little bit of an easier lane. But if they try to early pick Vayne because this guy likes that champion so much, and he feels really comfortable on it, I think it's super punishable. Jinx, Jhin are both, I think, great laning against Vayne, and can make it can give her a really hard time in lane. So I can see that being problem if this guy wants to focus Vayne that heavily.
So what'd be really nice is if you had the support switch position or switch teams.
Yeah.
Because you have
I agree.
Alistar and Jhin, which work very well together, and even Jinx because you get the CC set up. And Xayah. Alistar works great with all of those champions. I knew Epoch plays a ton of CC lockdown, which is what Jinx, Jhin, and Xayah want all throughout the lane phase. And Karma, Morg, Rakan have the decent mix of offensive and defensive that Vayne, Kate, and Xayah all want as well. Primarily Vayne. Vayne needs the defensive, but if it's too defensive, both the AD and the support are going to get punished too much. It's difficult to see, or it's difficult to assume too much about the matchups, like I've said before, just based on the champ pool.
Okay, so I want to switch it back up to the top lane. Fat Booty, what do you think about LMP's top laner? He plays a lot of very good, like as you said earlier, volatile top lanes with Darius, Camille, Gnar. Those are, at least with the Gnar pick, it's not as volatile, but it's definitely better in lane. Now we've at least recently been playing a lot of Ignite top. Do you think that that's something that'll be viable, even though like he doesn't run something like, if he runs spellbooks, if he ran a spellbook, then that'd be fine, but it's usually Ignite top lane with something like Phase Rush for Darius or the typical Arcane Comet for Camille. What do you think about this aggro style of top lane?
Well, yeah, none of the top laners that he has here, Darius, Camille, or Gnar, none of those want to bring Spellbook in the slightest. So if he's going to go Ignite top, it looks like he's just not going to have TP. And I would say that as a general rule in competitive gameplay, it's probably best to bring TP just because of how hard your bot lane can get punished in the early game by TPs from the enemy top laner that you might want to match, or how hard the other team can run you around the map, knowing that every time you go clear a wave bot, they have significantly more Baron pressure because they can TP and you won't be able to make it there. So if this guy wants to bring Ignite, I think that the whole team has to commit to it. I think the mid laner has to pick Talia, which we see that he plays, and he has to try to get roams up out there to get the Darius ahead. Or the jungler has to pick the Gragas or the Sejuani and just kind of like consistently sit there for the entire lane, just to make sure that he gets ahead and there's no chance of him falling behind. Because if you're going to take Ignite and you're going to fall behind, a good top laner and a good team, the lane is essentially over, you know? But at the same time, if he does take the top lane and he gets one of these matchups, like we see Bagels are nice plays, Gangplank and Jace, those are matchups where if the Darius gets ahead with Ignite because of jungle ganks or just because of the 1v1 and having Ignite, that lane can become a total stomp. Like Gangplank can't even sit under tower anymore because every time Ignite is up, he's dead. Jace can't walk up to poke with autos, which is what Jace always wants to do, because if he gets grabbed, and Jace has short enough range to totally get grabbed by the Darius while autoing him, he with phase rush 100% of the time. So I think that really, like, they have to commit really hard. It can work out. I think it's super volatile again for this lane. It can either work out really, really well or really, really badly. On the other hand, if LNP Gaming, Captain Ego, if he goes for one of his other champs, if he goes for Camille and Gnar, I think those two are actually pretty good at dealing with the Jace that Bagels Are Nice wants to bring out. Jace is always going to have a lot of pressure in the lane, but Gnar, I think you could argue it's like a little bit of a skill matchup. And Camille will probably get bullied as well, but she'll be able to survive, and she'll definitely be useful later in the game, and she'll pose a threat once she scales and once she gets her item in the 1v1. So I wouldn't be surprised to see LNP Gaming maybe go away from the Darius and go to these two other less volatile picks, especially if they feel like they want to focus somewhere else on the map. If they want to get mid or bot ahead, they should definitely not be picking the Darius with Ignite, because if it's just a complete disaster, especially against something like Gangplank or Jace. They're just going to permanently outscale him for the rest of the game, and he's never going to come back into it.
All right. So that finishes up the last two matchups. Dyrude, take it away.
Yeah, actually, the last thing I really want to say about Kiss Me Dads is that for Fall GatorLAN last semester, they were Team Justin McDaddy, who actually gave Josh, your team, quite a bit of trouble. It seemed like for both games. You did 2-0 them, but they definitely gave trouble throughout those games. So they're a very well-known team and definitely a very tough team to take down. But it does seem like LNP Gaming have some of the tools that they need to kind of start instigating an upset. At this point, though, basically with all that we just talked about, I want to go through and do like a projected like March Madness bracket. I want to talk about, not really talk about, but like just project, kind of the whole tournament, who we think will win based off of our information. Just keep in mind, both of you or all of you guys, that these matches are best of 3. So some teams could have potential to win a game, but do they have potential to win 2 out of 3? So starting off with the Battlestar Ball Cleaners versus Left Cleat Gaming. I know Lobsterman and Booty, you guys are a little bit biased about this, but just really quickly, do we have a consensus on who'd win that?
I mean, I think we will, and it won't, even though it'll likely be because of the difference in player skill just to begin with, I even think that Left Cleat Gaming, their picks are they're just not going to work well and competitive. Like, I can't see them forming a cohesive team comp that'll be strong in all parts of the game and will have a super clear win condition that won't be super punishable, especially if they pick something like the Master Yi, or their top laner picks something like the Trinamir or the Pantheon. I think while those two picks can stomp in solo queue especially, they can also lose really, really hard if they fall behind. So I foresee us winning that, even if based off of just champion picks alone.
Yeah, and as a devil's advocate, just to speak on what Left Cleat Gaming's win condition could be, it's if the jungle matchup goes in their favor and the bot lane goes too even. If bot lane doesn't get a lead on the side of Battlestar Ball Cleaners, that's favorable for them. They want to have as much bot lane pressure for the Master Yi support. And if top lane somehow, if some slight issue goes wrong in top lane, it could be over based on how snowbally top is. The big issue that they need to look for is mid lane. They need to pay attention to mid lane. They need to not overgank mid lane. They need to not die at all to mid lane, because Kembo is easily going to be the best player that has walked into GatorLAN in a very long time. And disrespecting that is going to be their downfall.
That sounds good to me. All right, second matchup, number 4 seeded Counterlogic Gators versus number 5 seeded Team Fish Burrito. Guys, does Team Fish Burrito have what it takes to instigate an upset?
Team Fish Burrito. I actually think they do, and part of the reason for that is, again, just looking at champion picks, I can already foresee a pretty good comp for them where they take the Trundle top, so they have like a tank in the top lane that's actually good right now too. Trundle's pretty good right now. Warwick in the jungle is a good champion, definitely almost all the time. Vlad in the mid lane scales really well and can definitely keep up in lane, especially against, maybe the Fizz can punish him really hard, but I think the Ori and the Veigar will just end up being scaling matchups for him. He'll totally be able to get through lane. And then what they can do is just run like a Rakan Leona bot lane where they have like another semi-tank kind of thing, and their AD carry only plays hyper carries. He's playing Twitch Vayne Jinx, and he's playing a lot of Kai'Sa, who is really good right now. Maybe not meant to be a hyper, how strong she is, definitely is a hyper carry right now. So I can just see them forming like a nice, huge frontline team comp with two great scaling hyper carries, and I can see that if Counter Logic Gators isn't able to build a strong lead and then capitalize on that lead and close out the game smoothly, it can totally go late game. At which point, I have to give Team Fish Burrito. I definitely have to give them the benefit of the doubt because their team comp will just be so difficult to deal with in the late game.
Lobsterman, do you have any reservations about any of that?
No, I think the favorable top lane and jungle matchup could push Team Fish Burrito just over the edge far enough to where that kind of Logic Gators can't really respond. It's going to be based on bot lane, whether I think this game is going to be bot lane dependent, heavily bot lane dependent, and the mid lane is going to be very
And the
Coin flip.
Nocturne too, though. This is the Nocturne guy who plays hella
Yeah.
Nocturne.
I think the issue with the Nocturne and giving that much too much credit is the top lane picks are almost always going to be in Team Fish Burrito's favor, and Nocturne most likely won't be solo killing Warwick or Volibear, and getting onto Vladimir, Cat, and Akali is a little bit difficult in Volibear. So playing top side of the map is going to be super difficult for Counter Logic if they pick the Nocturne. However, going bot lane, I think it's heavily favored for them based on what we know. So it could be interesting.
And it could also be pretty likely too that, given that he's a one-trick Nocturne, that could be a ban that Team Fish Burrito look towards.
Yeah.
This is definitely going to be a 2-1 if anything happens.
All right. That sounds good to me. Let's move on to our second seeded team, UF Team 2, taking on 7th seeded Outer Heaven Gaming. Guys, lay it on me.
I gotta give this to UF Team 2 because I know they've been together for a pretty long time. I know their players have made personal improvements. For example, now we see that they have 4 diamond players and 1 plat player, which used to not be the case. Their bot lane used to be both plat players, so I can see that they're both playing the game. They're both moving up from where they were and are probably generally better players now. But the only thing is, maybe the jungle on the other team, maybe he gets really ahead. We see he likes to play Warwick. He likes to play the Vi. 2 picks that can be super problematic if they get ahead. But the fact that they seem to not have a true top laner, it looks like they have a support playing up there. And from what I remember, their bot lane wasn't the scariest thing ever, so I don't think that they'll be able to just win through bot lane, barring any huge mistakes from Safe and Gremmy. I think I gotta give it to UF Team 2, even if it's just because I'm more familiar with them and I'm sort of biased to their ability as players.
Even looking past that, the top lane matchup is too favorable, and when you have that level of advantage in any lane, it swings good 2-1 if it's not a 2-0 sweep. I think if Pitiful gets Warwick, it's definitely going to be over from there. I'm definitely going to give it to Outer Haven if they can, at least one of the games, if they can get Warwick. Otherwise, it's going to be too clean on UF Team 2's side.
Alright, I want to play devil's advocate here. I want to say 2-1 Outer Heaven Gaming. I know I haven't spoken yet, but Outer Heaven Gaming, while there are a couple of in-roster issues, such as constantly swapping players to different roles to try them out for stuff, I think if Pitiful is able to gain a lead in both games, then they're just going to run over. And as Fat Booty said, if they just ban Thresh every game, then it just might be an instant win through the bot lane, despite Safe's personal ability. I think that between just Pitiful running, as if the jungle matchup is going to be really important, because if Pitiful can get the matchup that he wants and get the ganks off that he needs, being an aggressive player such as himself, then I think he can just run over UF Team 2. So I give it to, as long as Pitiful is able to do whatever he wants, which that's why I'm expecting at least one game to go badly, but he's just such an aggro jungler that I don't think UF Team 2 is going to be ready for it.
I don't know who the jungler for UF Team 2 is that you guys have here, Mike Keolis, but I remember the guy who they had, and this might be him because I remember he had a bunch of Smurfs, the guy who they had last semester, and he's a pretty passive jungler. He does play a lot of Warwick, so I think this might still be him, but he's a pretty passive jungler, and I can see Pitiful getting to have his reign over the map if that's what he wants. But I've also seen Pitiful's from playing in a tournament against him at Florida Polytechnic. His aggression is sometimes to a fault, you know? He picks these champions that you really don't want to fall behind on, like a Mumu and Vi, and well, Mumu not so much. He's kind of gonna fall behind, but Vi especially, he likes to go to his Vi, and if you fall behind on the Vi, he kind of doesn't know how to get back into the game without just dying a bunch more times. And if you start doing that on Vi, you just become an ult bot that instantly pops the second the AD carry gets out of the CC after you ult them, you know? So I can see you guys thinking that they're going to win because he's so aggressive, but I can also see it being their downfall because he's that aggressive.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. While I do think that Outer Heaven, I think they'll be able to get Warwick maybe for one game if they manage to get it in game two. I would think. Then I would give them one win, but I definitely do agree that I think UF Team 2 will be able to get this one under wraps if they can get the Warwick off the table in no matter what fashion. All right, so for the last quarterfinal matchup, we have the 3-seed Kiss Me Dads, also formerly known as Team Justin McDaddy, playing against 6-seeded LNP Gaming. Does LNP have what it takes?
I think whenever you look at the top lane, well, I'll just go matchup to matchup really fast. When you go top lane, you have high pressure. I'm assuming that the LMP top laner is going to take Ignite. And if he does take Ignite, it's going to be super unfavorable. GP and Jace control the lane way too easily. Having teleport just pushes them way over the edge. The jungle, however, is very favorable for LMP. Diana and Twitch are too snowbally. They're too condition based. If they don't get their power spike, if they don't hit it properly, it could go really, really bad for them. The mid lane, I'm definitely favoring Kiss Me Dads. The Ahri, Ori, and Lux, they're way too versatile. If they get behind, they can still do things. Same thing for the bot lane. I think that LMP is going to suffer a little bit. I think having the flexibility and the high pressure output that Kiss Me Dads has versus the LMP has a lot of aggression in their bot lane, but I don't know if it's enough to push them over the edge and to snowball consistently because their bot lane's just easily gankable. But that could not be abused because Diana and Twitch. I think Kiss Me Dads has the advantage, but I don't think it's enough to say that it's a 2-0 sweep or even a 2-1. I think it's definitely going to be really, really close, but they have the favor in my book. Not by far.
I guess the thing is, like, it depends how LMP chooses to approach the game. If they're going to try to stop Kiss Me Dads, I don't think it's going to work too well because of the way that the lanes match up, like with the Ahri and the Ori and the Lux. They're all pretty solid laners considering that he's going to be going against something like the Azir, maybe a Katarina, maybe a Talia. I think he'll be able to deal with those champions. It's more that if LNP gets, like, their ideal comp, if they get Darius or Camille or Gnar, if they're gonna take the Gragas or Sedge and they're not gonna be banned away or picked away by Kiss Me Dads, if they get the Azir and they get a Jinx or a Jhin or a Xayah and they get one of those Ardent supports or maybe just a Morg to Black Shield the Jinx, late game can be really scary for Kiss Me Dads. Even if they have a GP and a Jace, just having like Azir, Jinx, and an Ardent support and a tank jungle can be really, really difficult to deal with no matter what the skill difference is between the players. So I think that if they just kind of go in with a mindset of like, as long as we don't lose this game too early, we'll get to a point where our win conditions will be significantly clearer than that of our opponents. They've got a good chance if they can get there, though. I don't know if they'll be able to get there because, yeah, he's kind of right that even if this guy brings Ignite top, I just see GP and Jace. GP can actually be pretty difficult to kill nowadays because of the build. Like if you go Triforce, Sterix, and like Tabby or something like that, he can be difficult to kill. And if this guy's playing Jace, he just straight up beats any of the champions that LMP wants to pick into that. So I can see that I can see top lane completely snowballing out of control and then running the rest of the map before the Jinx and the Azir have time to come online. And if the Jinx and the Azir haven't come online, then Gragas, Karma, Morge, or Sejuani, all of those champions are just useless because they need their team to come online to do their jobs really well and to peel for their team and to be a good front line.
All right. So I think that's pretty clear and consistent that we're going to have 3 Kiss Me Dads be the team that wins that. Now, I know that we wouldn't talk about potential semifinal matchups or anything like that, but do you guys think you have a favorite that you think there is to win the whole thing?
I think UF Team 2 has the potential to win.
Yeah.
They definitely
I
are
think
one
as
of the
long as
stronger
UF
teams.
Team 2 doesn't psych themselves out, I think they've got a good chance for sure. They're
All right.
definitely a solid team, and they've gotten better this semester than they were last. So I can see them actually being pretty good, but I also know that once they start losing, like they start losing, they start losing really bad. They kind of get in their own heads. Um, and if they don't think they can beat a team, then it's difficult to even beat that team if you don't even believe in yourself. So I think as long as they keep each other in check, as long as they play clean and don't make any silly mistakes, they can definitely beat the rest of the teams here. And I don't see why any team with solid players like that and good team play wouldn't be able to beat us as well.
Yeah.
All right, well, there you have it. From our experts, they confidently believe in UF Team 2 to take GatorLAN entirely. And for everybody, thank you for joining us. That will wrap it all up. You can catch GatorLAN April 21st, starting at 12 p.m. in the Wrights Grand Ballroom. That is specifically the League of Legends portion. The game should start around 12 p.m. If you can't make it in person, then please definitely check out the casted stream. Me and Alk are casting it, as well as another very special guest from Florida Polytechnic. You can catch that only at www.twitch.tv/UF Gator Gaming LOL Club. And if you also have, I'm going to see you're watching this YouTube video, please make sure to like and subscribe if you like the content. Comment, give me any sort of feedback, things that you'd like to see. I really want to do this to not just improve our content, but in order to give you guys something a little bit more to be excited for. Thanks, everybody, and we hope to see you April 21st.